Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing my girlfriend, Caressa Whitby, ever did wasn't cheating or leaving. It was the way she erased me in public, like I was a mistake she was finally proud to correct. In a room full of people, she smiled and told everyone, "He has no place in my life. He's just there." Then she laughed, like my hurt was entertainment. Here's how it happened. My name is Terrence Halston, and for most of my adult life, I believed love is steady work. Not loud work. Not work you post. The kind you do when nobody is watching, showing up, being consistent, being careful with someone's heart. I met Caressa in Philadelphia after a friend dragged me to a community fundraiser near University City. She had this clean, confident energy, like she was always one step ahead of the room. When she smiled at me, it felt like I'd been chosen. I didn't know then how expensive being chosen could become. At first, it was easy to love her. She was finishing school and working part-time, always tired, always proud, always pushing. I worked operations at a packaging plant in Chester, the kind of job that keeps your hands busy and your mind steady. Caressa told me she liked that I was calm. She said I made her feel safe. I took that seriously. I learned her comfort routines, peppermint tea, quiet showers, soft music while she studied. I didn't think of it as doing the most. I thought of it as building something. My apartment in Upper Darby was small, but it was clean and stable. Caressa started spending more nights there, especially when her roommate situation got chaotic. I didn't ask for rent money. I didn't keep score. I just made room. I'd get home from a long shift and still wash dishes so she could study in peace. I'd fold her laundry while she was in the shower, not because she demanded it, but because I loved the feeling of making her life lighter. She would kiss my forehead and say, "Thank you, baby." I believed that meant something. I was protective in quiet ways. I walked her to her car at night, even if the parking lot was well lit, because I didn't play with safety. If her phone died, I made sure she had a charger in her bag. I learned what topics made her anxious: money, her mother's criticism, feeling behind. When she got overwhelmed, I didn't push solutions on her. I'd ask, "Do you want comfort or advice?" She used to look at me like that question alone was love. Back then, she still acted like it was. The shift started slowly, like a temperature change you don't notice until you're already sweating. Caressa got accepted into a competitive program and started talking about levels and circles. New friends, new brunch spots, more pictures, more group chats. She didn't cheat in front of me. She didn't scream at me. She just began treating me like a background item, like I was part of the furniture in the life she was redesigning. When I mentioned it, she'd sigh and say I was being sensitive. I learned to swallow things that were hurting me. I still tried to show up. I brought her dinner when she studied late in West Philly. I kept a small list in my phone of things she liked: coconut water, a certain lotion scent, the exact brand of granola she swore kept her focused. I left little notes for her. "I'm proud of you. I'm here. You don't have to carry everything alone." She would smile and take a photo of the note, but the photos stopped being about me. They became props for her story of being supported. My love was becoming a caption instead of a relationship. Around that time, she asked me for something small that turned into something big. She said her credit was in progress, and she wanted to move into a nicer place closer to Center City after graduation. "Just for 1 year," she said. "I need to be close to opportunities." I didn't want to co-sign, but she framed it like trust, like belief, like partnership. She said, "If you really see a future with me, you won't leave me stuck." The sentence landed like a quiet threat. I told myself it was temporary. I agreed. That decision stitched my name into parts of her life she didn't respect. The lease required proof of income and stable payment history. My name became the safety net under her plan. Utilities got attached to my auto pay because she said she didn't want to miss anything during finals. Her car insurance got put under my policy because it was cheaper. Her phone line got added to my plan because she said her provider was robbing her. Each change seemed reasonable alone. Together, they made me less her boyfriend and more her infrastructure. Meanwhile, Caressa's tone with me changed. She stopped asking about my day unless she needed something. If I said I was tired, she'd say, "Everybody's tired." If I said I felt disrespected, she'd say, "You're making it bigger than it is." One night, after I drove across town to bring her a charger she forgot, she looked at me like I was slow and said, "Terrence, you don't have to be so attached." Attached, like my care was a problem. I drove home in silence and sat in my car for 10 minutes before going inside. I didn't want to be the man who complains about a woman's ambition. I respected her goals. I just didn't recognize the way she was reshaping me into a tool. I kept trying to love her softly anyway. I kept making her home calm. I kept being present without demanding attention. I told myself the stress of graduation was making her sharp. I told myself the version of her that held my face in her hands on quiet nights was the real her. I told myself a lot of things because the truth was heavy. The truth was that Carissa liked how I loved her, but she didn't like me. She liked the safety. She liked the consistency. She liked the way my steadiness made her feel elevated. She didn't respect the man doing it. I started noticing how she spoke about people, how she joked about struggle relationships, how she mocked men who worked regular jobs. She'd say it around her new friends, laughing. Sometimes I'd be sitting right there, and she'd still say it. It was like she was testing how much shame I could hold without breaking. The night she publicly humiliated me, I had been running on fumes. My plant was short-staffed, and I took extra hours because bills don't wait. Carissa had texted earlier, "Don't be late. It's important." It was her cousin's engagement dinner at a restaurant near Rittenhouse Square, bright lighting, white tablecloths, and expensive plates. Everyone looked polished. I came straight from work and changed in my car. Fresh shirt, clean shoes, cologne. I wanted to represent her well. I wanted to be a good partner in her world. When I walked in, Carissa didn't stand up to greet me. She didn't smile like she used to. She glanced at me like I'd interrupted. Her friends, Delia, Corinne, Marquis, were already in a tight circle, laughing. I want to kiss her cheek. She leaned back, not dramatically, just enough to make me feel it. Then she turned to them and said, loud and smooth, "He has no place in my life. He's just there." And she laughed, like it was clever, like it was overdue. Something in me went quiet. The room didn't spin. I didn't hear a dramatic ringing. I just felt my body choose survival. A few people chuckled. Someone said, "Stop, Carissa." But it wasn't a real correction. It was playful. No one checked her like it mattered. Carissa didn't look at me to see what her words did. She didn't apologize. She didn't soften. She lifted her glass and kept talking. I sat down slowly because standing felt too exposed. My chest was tight, like a fist was inside it. I tried to swallow it and get through dinner, but I couldn't taste anything. I stared at my plate and listened to conversations about new jobs, new apartments, new trips. Carissa spoke like she was already in a different class than me. She told a story about outgrowing certain people. She didn't say my name, but she didn't have to. Her hand never reached for mine. Her eyes never asked if I was okay. She was enjoying the power of humiliating me. That's what made it cruel. Not the words, her pleasure in them. When dessert came, I excused myself and walked out. I didn't slam anything. I didn't create a scene. I didn't tell her to come outside. I walked to my car and sat with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't let it happen there. I drove back to Upper Darby with the radio off. Every red light felt like it lasted too long. When I got home, I didn't even take my boots off. I sat at my kitchen table in the dark and replayed her voice over and over until it stopped sounding like a joke and started sounding like a decision. Around 2 a.m., my phone lit up. Carissa texted, "Where did you go?" Then, "You always do this." Then, "You embarrassed me." I stared at the messages and felt something harden. She had cut me in public and somehow decided I owed her comfort afterward. No remorse, no accountability, just entitlement. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. I realized anything I said would become fuel for her story of me being emotional. So I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't explain. I just wrote one sentence. "You said I have no place in your life. I'm going to respect that." I slept maybe 2 hours. In the morning, I moved like a man handling glass. I went to work, did my job, nodded at coworkers, and kept my face calm. But inside, I felt hollow. At lunch, I opened my notes app and made a list, not a revenge list, a boundary list. Everything my name was attached to in Caresa's life. Everything I'd been paying for, planning for, protecting her through. I didn't want drama. I wanted separation. I wanted peace. I wanted to stop bleeding quietly. My job has taught me something. Disasters aren't sudden. They're systems ignored until they fail. The first thing I did was gather proof. Not to expose her online. Not to humiliate her back. To protect myself legally and financially. I pulled up the lease documents. I saved confirmation emails for utility autopay. I screenshotted the text where she asked me to add her to my insurance and phone plan. I saved bank statements showing my payments. I created a folder and labeled it with the date. It felt cold, but it felt necessary. When someone treats you like you are replaceable, you stop trusting them to be fair. I needed a record of reality. Then I started removing myself, step by step, the way you pull stitches without tearing skin. I contacted the utility companies and transferred accounts out of my name where possible. I scheduled cutoffs to align with lease terms. I called my insurance and removed her vehicle from my policy effective the next billing cycle. I separated the phone plan and requested her number be ported out to her own account. I notified the leasing office that I would not be renewing and asked for the process to remove myself as the financial guarantor at the earliest legal date. Everything I did was documented. Calm, clean, unemotional. I didn't tell Caressa every step. I didn't know her a play-by-play. I sent one message. We need to talk about logistics. I'm separating my accounts from yours. Check your email for updates from providers. She replied in minutes, not sorry, angry. So you're punishing me? Then, I knew you were insecure. Then, you're really showing your true colors. That phrase always makes me laugh now, because my true colors were simply boundaries. Caresa's true colors were the way she treated boundaries like betrayal. That week was one of the hardest of my life because I had to grieve while still functioning. I come home and see her hair tie on my dresser, her lotion on my bathroom shelf, the extra toothbrush in the cup, and feel my throat tighten. I wasn't just losing her. I was losing the version of myself that believed softness would be respected. She continued moving like nothing happened, posting photos, going out, laughing. When she did come by, she acted irritated by my quietness. She wanted me to argue. She wanted the drama, so she could point at it and say, "See, this is why." Then the first connected twist hit, something I didn't even plan for. My phone rang at work. It was an unfamiliar number from a medical office in Camden, New Jersey. The woman on the line sounded tired. "Mr. Halston? We're trying to reach Caressa Whitby. You're listed as her emergency contact." My stomach dropped. I asked if she was okay. The woman said, "She's stable. We need someone to confirm discharge instructions." I sat in the break room, staring at the wall. Caressa had said I had no place in her life, but she still had me listed where her life gets serious. I told the woman the truth calmly. "I'm no longer her emergency contact. Please remove me." The woman paused, then said, "Understood." I hung up and felt sick. Not because I didn't care if Caressa was okay, because I did. It was because she had made it clear my humanity meant nothing until she needed it. That's a cruel kind of convenience. I texted Caressa one sentence. "A clinic called me. Update your emergency contact information." She replied, "Mind your business." No thank you. No acknowledgement. No remorse. A few days later, the second twist connected itself. My insurance agent emailed me asking to confirm changes, and in the message she included a note. Caressa had tried to call and dispute the removal of her car. She wanted my policy to stay active because her rate would jump on her own. She told them I was being spiteful. The agent wrote, politely, "Please confirm you still want the change, as you are the policyholder." I stared at the screen and felt a strange calm settle in. Caressa wasn't sad about losing me. She was furious about losing the benefits of me. The third twist was the lease. The building manager called and asked if I was aware that Caressa had requested a renewal offer without my signature. She had told him I was busy and would sign later. I thanked the manager for checking and told him, "Do not renew anything under my name." That call made my hands shake. Not with anger, with fear. because I realized how easily someone can use your name if they think you'll always clean up after them. I drove home that night and removed every trace of my information from any shared device. I changed passwords. I froze my credit. Quiet protection. Quiet survival. Carissa came to my apartment unannounced that weekend, dressed like she was going to a brunch. She didn't come to talk like a partner. She came like a supervisor. She stood in my doorway and said, "So, this is what you're doing?" I told her calmly, "You told everyone I have no place in your life. I'm accepting that." She rolled her eyes and walked inside like my boundary didn't matter. She looked around my living room and said, "You're acting like a victim." I said, "I'm acting like a man separating his life from someone who disrespects him." Her face tightened. Still no apology. Still no remorse. She tried a different angle. "You're going to mess me up," she said, like the consequences were my fault. "I have interviews. I have a new job coming up. I can't deal with your emotions." That's when I understood something. Carissa didn't see my feelings as real. She saw them as noise. I didn't raise my voice. I said, "This isn't about emotions. This is about responsibility. I won't be responsible for your life anymore." She laughed once, sharp. "You're not that important." Then she walked out and slammed my door hard enough to rattle the frame. I sat down and stared at the silence she left behind. The suffering part wasn't just losing her. It was realizing how much I had shrunk to fit her. I had stopped buying small things for myself because I was always covering something temporary for her. I had missed my cousin's cookout in Baltimore because Carissa had a study crisis. I had postponed taking a certification course because she needed help with just one more payment. I had been building her future while my own life stayed on pause. That kind of self-abandonment doesn't heal overnight. It felt like waking up after a long illness and realizing you don't recognize your own face. The next month was a chain reaction, and every link connected back to the same truth. Carissa had built her stability on my quiet work. Once I stepped away, her life didn't collapse because I attacked her. It collapsed because it wasn't hers to begin with. The utilities switched. The phone plan separated. The insurance ended. The lease renewal got blocked. None of it was dramatic, but it was relentless. Life doesn't care about pride. It cares about payment dates. Carissa didn't adjust. She got angrier. She called me names. She told mutual friends I was bitter. Not one time did she say, "I hurt you." Around mid-month, my phone rang again. This time it was Carissa's new employer's HR department, an office in King of Prussia where she had interviewed. The woman asked if I could verify some contact information because my number was listed on a form Carissa submitted. My stomach turned. It wasn't just emergency contact. It was professional paperwork. My name was still attached to her life, like a handle she expected to keep grabbing. I told HR, carefully, "Please remove my number. We're no longer together." The woman said, "Understood." When I hung up, my hands were steady. My heart was not. Carissa showed up that evening furious, like I had sabotaged her. "Why would you tell them that?" she demanded. "You made me look unstable." I looked at her and realized she truly believed reality was optional. I said, "You made yourself look unstable by listing someone you publicly disrespected." Her eyes narrowed. "I didn't disrespect you. You're just sensitive." That word again. Sensitive. Like it was a flaw. I said, "You told a room full of people I had no place in your life." She shrugged like it was nothing. It was a joke. I held her gaze and said, "There was a truth you enjoyed saying." She had no response, just a cold stare. This is where another twist connected, one I didn't see coming until it was already in my hands. A letter arrived addressed to me, but referencing Carissa's address downtown. It was a collection notice, small but specific. She had attempted to open a line of credit and used my information as a reference contact without telling me. Not a full identity theft situation, but enough to bind my name to her financial mess. I read the letter twice, then sat down slowly. The humiliation dinner wasn't just cruelty. It was a warning. She didn't respect boundaries, and she felt entitled to my name, my steadiness, my protection, while laughing at my value. I didn't call her to scream. I handled it the way I handle everything, quietly, correctly. I disputed the reference. I filed a note with the bureau. I locked my credit. I kept copies of every document. I started checking my accounts more often. I tightened my life like a man securing his home after realizing someone had been leaving the door unlocked. The emotional cost of that is hard to explain. It's not just anger. It's grief. It's realizing the person you loved would have let your life burn as long as they stayed warm. Carissa didn't know any of that yet. She was busy maintaining her image. She kept going to dinners, events, little celebrations, smiling in pictures. But behind the scenes, practical life started taking pieces from her. Her car got flagged for coverage issues when she tried to renew registration. She called me and said, "Did you remove my car?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Why would you do that?" I said, "Because my name isn't your safety net." She scoffed and said, "You're so petty." No apology. No responsibility. Just contempt. She hung up on me like I was the one who had broken something sacred. The next week, her phone line switched over, and she lost service for almost a full day because she didn't complete the account transfer correctly. She called me from a friend's phone, furious, saying I was doing too much. I said, "You're an adult. Set up your own account." She said, "You think you're teaching me a lesson." I said, "I'm protecting my life." She laughed and said, "You're not even important like that." That sentence didn't hurt the way it would have before. It sounded like someone stepping on a bridge they don't realize is already missing. My suffering deepened in a different way. Without Carissa's demands filling my time, I had space to feel everything I'd been avoiding. I started waking up at 4 a.m. with my mind racing. I'd drive to work and replay moments, times she dismissed my feelings, times she used my support like it was owed, times I ignored my own discomfort to keep the peace. Sometimes I'd sit in my car after work and stare at the steering wheel, not ready to go inside. My apartment felt quiet, but not peaceful yet. It felt like a room where an argument had happened and the air still remembered. I didn't run to social media. I didn't start dating to prove anything. I didn't join anything public. I did small, private repairs. I started going to the gym early, not to transform my body for revenge, but to give my nervous system a place to release pressure. I began cooking meals on Sundays and packing my lunch with care like I mattered. I called my cousin in Baltimore and apologized for missing so many things. He said, "You're here now." That sentence healed something in me. Being here now. Being mine again. Carissa, on the other hand, kept trying to pull me back into her orbit whenever her life demanded a reliable person. The strangest part was how predictable it became. If she wanted comfort, she'd text something soft. "I miss you sometimes." If she needed something, she'd text directly. "I need you to handle this." When I didn't respond, she'd flip to insults. "You always were weak." She tried every lever she'd used before: guilt, pressure, mockery. None of it came with remorse. She didn't miss me. She missed what my presence did for her. The most painful connected twist happened on a Tuesday. I was on shift when my supervisor called me into the office. He looked uncomfortable. "Terrence," he said, "someone contacted the front desk asking for you." It was Carissa. She had come to my job, not because she was sorry, because her car had been towed after being parked somewhere she shouldn't have during a meeting downtown, and she needed a ride. She needed help. She needed rescue. She needed the place she claimed I didn't have. When I stepped into the lobby, she stood there with her arms crossed like I owed her. "You're really going to leave me stuck?" she asked. I looked at her face and felt something old rise. Instinctive protectiveness. The version of me that used to rush to solve her problems pushed forward. But then I remembered the dinner, the laughter, the way she watched me swallow humiliation and kept sipping her drink. I remembered her calling my feelings an inconvenience. I remembered her using my name without respect. I said, calmly, "Call a rideshare or a friend." Her eyes widened like I slapped her. "So you're just going to let me struggle?" she demanded. I said, "You said you didn't have a place for me. That includes my help." Her mouth tightened. No apology, just hatred. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "You're doing this because you're jealous," she said. "You can't stand that I'm moving up." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was such a clean example of how she saw the world. To Carissa, care was weakness and boundaries were envy. I said, "I'm not jealous. I'm done being used." She scoffed. "Used? You're not even that valuable." Then she turned and stormed out of the lobby. My supervisor watched me quietly. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded like he understood more than he wanted to. After that, Carissa's life started losing pieces faster. Not because I interfered, but because she kept making choices that required a safety net she no longer had. She missed an important appointment because her transportation wasn't reliable. She argued with her leasing office about renewal terms and found out my name had been the reason they approved her in the first place. When they asked for updated verification under her sole name, she couldn't provide what they needed. She called me, furious, saying, "They're treating me like I'm nobody." I didn't say it out loud, but I thought, that's what you did to me. One evening, I got another call, this time from a friend of hers, Zuriel Phelps, someone who had laughed at the engagement dinner. Zuriel tried to sound neutral. "Hey, Terrence," she said, "Carissa is really going through it. She's stressed." I kept my voice calm. She should reach out to her support system. Zuriel hesitated. She said, "You're punishing her." I said, "I'm respecting what she announced." Zuriel sighed and said, "That dinner was a lot." I said, "And nobody checked her." Silence. Then Zuriel said, "I guess we all thought you'd just take it." That sentence landed like a bruise. I said, "I did take it. Once. Never again." Carissa didn't lose sleep over my pain, but she did lose sleep over the consequences. Her tone and messages became more frantic. Not softer, frantic. "We need to talk. You're ruining everything. I'll never forgive you for this. Forgive me." Like I had harmed her. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding myself quietly. I enrolled in a certification program in Columbus, Ohio, because a colleague told me about better opportunities. I didn't announce it. I didn't tell Carissa. I just moved my life forward the way I should have been doing all along. The next connected twist arrived when I received a forwarding request in my email, a notification that someone had attempted to update a billing address linked to my old account, and the request originated from Carissa's device. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, then realized something important. Carissa didn't just want access to me emotionally. She wanted access to my systems, my stability, my order, my identity as a responsible man. I changed passwords again. I enabled additional security. I contacted providers and made sure no changes could be made without direct confirmation. Each step felt like closing a door that should have never been opened. Carissa called that night screaming. Not crying, not remorseful, screaming. "Why did you lock everything?" she demanded. I kept my voice level. "Because you tried to change my billing information." She said, "I didn't." I said, "The notification says otherwise." She laughed, a sharp, mean laugh. "You're paranoid." I said, "I'm careful." She said, "You're trying to make me look like a criminal." I said, "I'm protecting myself." She said, "You always think you're so righteous." Then she hung up. Still no apology. Still no accountability. She wasn't offended that she hurt me. She was offended that I noticed. My lowest point came when I realized I had started doubting my own instincts because I spent so long being told I was too sensitive. One morning, I stood in my bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror and felt numb. I hadn't cried at the dinner. I hadn't cried when she showed up at my job. I hadn't cried when the emergency contact call came. But that morning, I looked at my own face and felt the weight of everything I'd carried quietly, and tears finally came. Not dramatic sobbing, just silent tears. The kind you wipe away fast because you still have to go to work and keep your life moving. That same week, the plant offered me a transfer opportunity connected to a partner facility in Columbus. Better hours, better pay, a chance to reset. I accepted without hesitation. I told my family. I told 2 close friends. I didn't tell Carissa. She didn't deserve access to my future. The move wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was me stepping out of a life where my softness was punished and my protection was exploited. I packed slowly, keeping only what mattered. I threw away the notes I'd written for her. I didn't keep souvenirs of disrespect. When Carissa found out I was leaving, she called like she had discovered a betrayal. "So you're really running away?" she said. I said, "I'm moving forward." She said, "After everything I did for you?" I almost laughed again. Everything she did for me. I said, "Name one thing." She went silent for half a second, then said, "I gave you a purpose." That was the moment I knew the relationship was dead in a way it had probably been dead for a long time. I said, I don't need someone to give me purpose. She spat. Good luck. You'll regret this. No remorse. Just spite. I moved to Columbus and kept my life small and clean. Early gym, work, quiet dinners, Sunday meal prep. I built routines like walls, soft walls, not lonely walls. I started sleeping again. I started feeling my emotions return in healthier ways. I began saving money like a man who respects himself. I didn't date right away. I needed time to trust my own judgment again. I needed time to remember that being gentle isn't a flaw. It's a strength you give to people who deserve it. Not everyone does. The karma hit Caressa suddenly, but it was realistic, the kind of karma that comes from ignoring consequences. One day, months after I moved, I got an email from an old leasing office. Caressa had fallen behind and attempted to list me again as a guarantor without authorization. The office was reaching out to verify. I responded immediately. I do not authorize any agreement under my name. That was it. No insults, no lecture, just a boundary. Later, I learned that the attempt triggered additional verification and scrutiny. When people can't rely on your stability, they have to face their own instability. Caressa had been running from that reality for years. Another call came, this time from a mutual friend, Marquis Tolliver, who had laughed at the engagement dinner. He sounded uncomfortable. Terrence, he said, Caressa is blaming you for everything. She says you left her stranded. I said, she announced I had no place in her life. Marquis sighed. She didn't think you'd actually leave. That sentence told me everything about the way people had been viewing me, like I was a permanent resource, not a person. I said, that's the problem. Everybody assumed I would accept disrespect quietly. Marquis tried to apologize, but it sounded like guilt, not understanding. I didn't need his apology. I needed my peace. A few weeks later, I ran into a former coworker who told me Caressa had taken a job in Newark, Delaware, and quit abruptly after conflicts. She said people were against her, he said. I nodded. That sounded familiar. Caressa didn't change because she didn't believe she needed to. She saw consequences as attacks, not results. She saw boundaries as cruelty, not clarity. She kept moving like the world owed her softness while she stayed sharp. That a lonely way to live, but it was the life she chose. The karma wasn't that she suffered publicly. The karma was that she kept repeating herself and couldn't understand why the outcome stayed the same. My private success didn't look like a flashy glow-up. It looked like stability I didn't have to beg for. It looked like a promotion and quiet savings. It looked like me buying a used car outright instead of juggling payments. It looked like me taking a weekend trip to Cincinnati alone, just to breathe and walk along the river with no one demanding anything. It looked like peace in my chest when my phone buzzed, because it wasn't Caressa's chaos anymore. It looked like waking up and realizing I wasn't bracing for disrespect before I even brushed my teeth. The final connected twist came when Caressa tried one last time to force a place for me in her life. She emailed me from a new address. The message wasn't soft. It wasn't remorseful. It was a demand dressed as a request. I need you to sign something so I can finalize my housing. You owe me that after everything. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied with one line. I owe you nothing. Do not contact me again. I blocked the email. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. Because I realized something important. Explanations are for people who respect your humanity. Caressa didn't. Sometimes I still think about that dinner in Philadelphia. Not because I miss her. Because I miss the version of me that believed love always gets honored if you're patient enough. I had to learn that some people don't want love. They want control and comfort with no accountability. I had to learn that soft love still needs hard boundaries. I had to learn that protection isn't just walking someone to their car. It's also protecting your future from someone who feels entitled to it. That lesson came at a cost, but it also saved my life from slowly shrinking into someone else's convenience. The truth is, Caressa didn't break me in one moment. She wore me down in small ways until I almost forgot I deserved respect. She taught me what it feels like to be useful but not valued. She taught me what it feels like to be embarrassed and then blamed for reacting. She taught me how people will watch you suffer and call it relationship problems if you keep your voice low enough. And she taught me that the most dangerous kind of cruelty is the kind delivered with a smile, because it makes you question your own reality. When people ask me now what happened, I keep it simple. I don't drag her name around. I don't perform pain. I just say, she told people I had no place in her life, and I believed her. That sentence is enough. The rest is private. My growth is private. My peace is private. My wins are private. I didn't need to ruin Caressa. I just needed to remove myself from being used. And once I did, the consequences she had been avoiding found her naturally. Late fees, lost approvals, strained friendships, burned bridges. Not because I cast a curse, because reality finally met her without my buffer. If I could go back to that restaurant in Philadelphia, I wouldn't do anything dramatic. I wouldn't stand up and shame her. I wouldn't beg her to see my worth. I would do exactly what I did. Leave quietly, go home, document the truth, and reclaim my life. Because the comeback wasn't public. It wasn't loud. It was a private transformation from a man who kept proving himself to someone who didn't respect him into a man who finally understood this. Love without respect is just labor. Caressa wanted a life where I had no place. So I gave her exactly what that meant. No access to me, no access to my stability, and no access to my future. If this story just reminded you that love without respect is labor, do me a favor, subscribe. Drop one lesson you took from Terrence's comeback in the comments. And share this with someone who keeps overgiving to the wrong person. The next story is even colder, so turn on notifications.